So just to make you aware of that, I do have the chat box open as well. So if you do have some questions, I'm happy to answer those, and probably will do those towards the end. So today I wanted to look at marketing models and whether they've stood the test of time. Before we get underway, I just want to give a bit of introduction about myself. Those of you I haven't met before, my name is Berenson, and I have been working for around 18 years leading digital marketing projects and digital marketing strategy. I've worked with a whole range of clients from Vodafone, Sage, Dell, a company called Flow in the Caribbean, Sainsbury's. I also work with smaller, more local clients as well. And I've also spent time working with the Oxford College of Marketing, supporting students, writing course materials and developing digital marketing courses for them as well. So that's a bit about me. You'll probably notice my hair might change colour a little bit since the picture on the screen there. And also, it's just important that I give you a little bit of an outline as to who the Oxford College of Marketing are, those of you who haven't come across them before. We've got over 20 years experience in delivering digital marketing courses, sales and project management courses. We deliver lots of accredited qualifications and professional qualifications with all the acronyms. So the CIM, the ISM, APS, and also APM. So that's Chartered Institute of Marketing, Institute of Sales and Marketing, Association of Professional Sales, and also the Association of Project Management. We've got around 2,000 students with us study with us every year. We gain 98% plus pass rates with the Chartered Institute of Marketing qualifications. We recently submitted our biggest ever board for assessments, which was for April this year. So we are continuing to grow as a college. And we have 9 global study centres across the globe. Unfortunately, I'm sure you can imagine, not many of them are open at the moment. So we do have a full online learning platform, and also we offer virtual classes. Okay, so today's session is all about these marketing models. But just to put it all into context, first of all, marketing, unless you've been locked away somewhere, has dramatically changed in the last 10 years. We could actually say marketing has significantly changed in the last 4 months based upon what we're experiencing right now across the globe. But I've just put on this slide a few things we need to think about and how marketing has changed. So digital media, the rise of the importance of customer experience, personalization, data, automation, CSR, omnichannel, real-time marketing, social media. These are all things that have really changed marketing. Yet we still, as marketing professionals, also those who, if any of you undertake any marketing courses, we still teach you models from the 1900s, the 1940s, the 1950s, the 1960s, 80s, and I'm coming here today to speak to you to show that these models still are relevant. They might need a slight adjustment perhaps in the way that they're used and the way that we apply them. But I always feel that it's important when you're going on to a professional marketing qualification, or when you're studying a tool for marketing, that you're able to understand how such models can really be used in real life. Otherwise, it's particularly pointless on learning these models. I strongly feel that they can do, and I want to show to you, this is less about these particular models today. It's less about me telling you how these models work. It's more about me trying to demonstrate to you that they can be used practically, and how your organisation can use them practically, or how you as a marketer can use them in your day-to-day job role. And I think that's what's quite important. I've chosen 5, and I'll show you those in a moment. But before we get on, I just want to reiterate, marketers, we do love a model, and we do love an acronym. And actually, when there's double bubble, when the model is also an acronym, and a couple of those come up today. But yeah, I'm sure you know, marketers love models, they love acronyms, love a buzz term as well. Pivot is very much the buzz term of the moment. Out the window has gone agile. It's now all about pivoting. And that seems to be a definite buzzword, especially in some of the marketing press. I've been enjoying reading a little bit about pivoting. As I say, I chose 5 models, and these are just models really that I like. I probably could have chosen 7 or 8, but I whittled this down. Some of them you might know, some of them you might not. And as I said today, I don't really want to focus too much on how they work, what the theory is behind them, not too much about that. It's actually more about, well, what does that theory mean and how can I really use it day to day in my marketing function and my marketing department? You'll notice there we've got SOSTAC, SWOT, AIDA, 5 W's and 1 H, and the Golden Circle. So I'm going to look at each one by one. As I say, happy to take any questions you might have, but probably leave those more towards the end. So let's kick off with SOSTAC. Now, SOSTAC model that was put together by PR Smith. If you've never looked at his website, it's quite useful. He's got a really lovely overview of the model on his video as well. It's a really, really useful introduction. Did you know, though, that actually SOSTAC as a model was voted the 3rd most popular by the CIM in a poll of marketing models? And really, probably the reason why is it's easy to remember and it's an easy way to structure plans. SOSTAC is a planning model. It helps us plan our marketing activities, and that can be done at any level. It could be at the strategic level, at the campaign level, at communications. We can even look at it for specific channels, I don't know, like email or social media perhaps. And as you can see, from a marketer perspective, it's not just a model, it's an acronym, so it double ticks the boxes there. So whether you're, as I say, creating a strategy or an overall digital strategy, maybe an overall marketing strategy, SOSTAC can be a really useful model. And SOSTAC, those of you who haven't come across it before, stands for situation analysis, objective, strategy, tactics, action, and control. Or where are we now? Where do we want to be? How do we want to get there? How exactly do we get there? Who does what and when? And how do we monitor and measure performance? So you can see that it gives a really logical way on order of creating a plan. We build on each stage based upon what we found at the previous stage. It provides a sort of prescriptive strategic approach to planning, where we undertake a strategic analysis through undertaking an audit. We then develop our strategy, and then we look at how we might implement and undertake strategic implementation, and they're all linked together sequentially. And I think, you know, SOSTAC is popular because it is so simple, it's easy to remember, it covers kind of the main issues and the main things you need to put in a plan, and yeah, and I say it's really straightforward. But for me, and how I tend to use this is not necessarily always I'm going to use SOSTAC and show a client how I'm using SOSTAC. But I often just look at the where are we now, where do we want to be, how do we want to get there, who does what and when, and how we're going to monitor and measure performance. So I use it maybe as a more looser framework. And I certainly do use it when I meet clients and I have to put together plans for clients as well. I just wanted to break this down a little bit more because I wanted to also show you that with the SOSTAC, the elements have other marketing models within them. And obviously, we're not going to talk about this today, but just giving you some pointers as to various elements. So in our situation analysis, this is where we're undertaking an evaluation of the current situation. What are the strengths and weaknesses currently of the organisation itself? And what are the potential opportunities and threats? And there are models within there that we could use, or we could just go and do our own research. So we'll be focusing on our customers, our competitors, intermediaries and suppliers, and analysing what's happening with them right now. What are the opportunities and threats? We're doing an external analysis, so we might apply a model such as Steeple or Pestel. Again, you don't have to utilise the rigid nature of those particular models. You just need to understand what's happening in that external macro environment and how it's going to or is impacting on your organisation. We then obviously need to assess our own resources and capabilities, which is assessing the current situation internally. That will give us a really good view then on what actually do we need to do now. So where do we then want to be based upon where we are now? And that leads us into our SMART objectives. Those of you that have done any kind of studying for CIM will know how much we drum into this idea of SMART objectives. And that's really just to make sure that we're setting objectives that have a measure attached to them. That means we actually have, you know, there is a point where, you know, we have to look at achieving that. Also making sure they're time bound, because again, if we never put any time element on there, we could go on and on for eternity and never achieve those objectives. Our objectives then feed into, once we know where we want to be, we then need to detail how actually are we going to get there. And that's detailed in our strategy. So when we think about strategy, and I will be honest, no one seems to agree in academia what strategy is and what strategy looks like a lot of the time, especially when it comes to digital. However, generally what we're looking at is a broader approach to how we're going to get there. So thinking about aspects such as our customers, our markets, our value proposition. So I've listed there a couple of other models. We still, again, ANSOS model is 19, I think it's 57. I think it was at 67. Anyway, 1950s, 1960s, but it's still relatively relevant today. STP, segmentation, targeting, positioning, a very basic acronym, but again, it's telling us, well, actually, you know, who are our audiences, how can we target them, and how we're actually going to try and position ourselves in the mind of that customer. And also value proposition. We'll talk a lot more about value proposition when we get onto the Golden Circle a little bit later. Then how exactly are we going to get there? What are our tactics? Now, marketing mix, still talked about. Again, it's from the 1960s, slightly updated to include the services mix. It is very product focused, so some aspects have been updated. There's other models such as the 4Cs or race, but again, it's the devil in the detail. How exactly are you going to achieve your objectives? Things like the marketing mix and race just give us almost like an approach or elements to think about when we're putting those together. Then got our action plan. Here we'd be thinking about who does what and when. So we think about resources, we're thinking about physical resources, financial resources, time, which is where our Gantt chart might come in. We have the acronym, the 5 M's, manpower, money, minutes, machinery, and I've forgotten the last one off the top of my head. Men, money, minutes, machinery, and materials, that's it. And finally, the control. So as we, as PR Smith suggested, that the important element there is that we've got an ability to, or we're setting out before we, in our plan, how actually are we going to measure? So how are we going to track the performance of whether we are on track? You know, are we keeping to time? Are our tactics doing what they should do? Are they delivering on our strategy? Are we going to achieve our objectives? So it's setting out within that, we've got that ability to track and review and make sure we're on schedule to achieve what we wanted to do. I think one thing that that Smith points out is that often people spend far too much time analysing what's going on right now, and then not enough time then on actually planning the next bit. That's because as marketers, we're very comfortable, aren't we? Analysing what's happening, analysing past campaigns, but when it comes to then maybe being a bit more proactive and looking to plan for the future, that's where we find it quite hard. So he suggested a rule of thumb is you probably spend about 20% on your audit, 5% on your objectives, 45% on your strategy, 30% on your tactics, and the rest of that particular plan. So you can see that the chunk of it needs to come in the strategy and the tactics. Anyway, I'm getting into very much explaining what this model is, and really what I want to say to you is, how can this be used practically? I think I've given you quite a good overview already, but actually the benefit of SOSTAC is that it really is focused on what's happening now for your organisation, and also it's very customer centric as well, because it's looking at what's happening in the organisation's marketplace. It's actively getting you to review your customers, your external environment, and using that to then base on what you're going to do next and what your objectives are. It gives you those clear objectives and visions for the future. So it makes sure, as I said, that your objectives are measurable. They are focused on the issues that you've identified. So how are you actually going to take advantage of your opportunities or fix or try to overcome those particular threats? It gives a clear strategic direction as well. And really, I think also by having that, by having each stage lined out for us, it stops us as marketers, which we're very good at, is going straight to tactics, based again on what we think and feel, our gut feeling. So rather than doing any analysis and maybe not even setting any very good objectives, we kind of just start saying, oh, I know, let's start implementing a social media campaign. That sounds like a great idea. Oh yes, we need Facebook ads. Well, no, actually utilising this framework helps us think, well, actually, what do our customers want? Where do they engage with us? And what kind of messaging do they want to hear? Actually, what are we good at and what are we not good at? I mean, it might be you have no ability to support Facebook ads in your organisation. These are very basic examples at a more tactical level, but you get the idea as to how this particular planning framework can then be applied. It ensures also, and what's great about this framework is that our activities are aligned. So we're making sure that whatever we're choosing in terms of our tactics and strategies is aligned to what we want to achieve, our objectives. It's aligned to actually what's happening in our environment right now. We're making sure that we're addressing that. As I said before, we've got that method of tracking and reviewing in that framework as well. It ensures that we are keeping our strategy on track, and we are making sure that at the implementation stage, there's measurement happening there as well. And I think ultimately, and what I absolutely love about this model, is it can be used across a range of planning situations. So as I said before, we can use it for strategy, a marketing strategy. We could use it for a digital strategy or a digital marketing plan. We could use it for communications, for a social media plan. It could be used at different levels of the organisation. And you can also make it much more simplistic. As I said, often I use it. Where are we now? Where do we want to be? How are we going to get there? How do we ensure we get there? And how do we ensure arrival? Just a very basic approach to putting together a plan. And that can also, silly things like when I'm trying to put together a client presentation and some recommendations based upon some activity they want to do, that's how I break up my proposal to them. Well, where are we now? Where do we want to be? And how are we going to get there? And what measures are we going to take to make sure that we track and review that we get there? Quick swig of water, and then I'm going to move on to our next model. Another classic model for you here, SWOT. And it's probably one of the models I use all the time as well, especially again when I'm pitching with new clients. If you're not familiar with SWOT, SWOT stands for Strengths, Weaknesses, Opportunities and Threats. It's a classic marketing model. It has been credited with a chap called Albert Humphrey from the 60s and 70s for some work he did in Stanford, but actually Humphrey himself said he doesn't claim the creation of SWOT, and actually the origins are really not very clear as to where SWOT has come from. Again, what I love about SWOT is it's so flexible. It can be used at different levels of the organisation. It can be used as part of a strategic planning exercise. It can be used in a marketing plan. It can be used at lower levels. So we could do a SWOT on our email marketing. We could do a SWOT on our current social media, or on what we might be doing in digital marketing. Again, it can also be, we could do a SWOT on ourselves, from a personal brand perspective. It's a really flexible tool. But it's often used, as I said, as part of the strategic planning exercise. And what we saw from SOSTAC is that SWOT helps us to bring together all of our analysis of the current situation. So we're using internal and external data to guide the business, therefore, towards strategies that are more likely to be successful by utilising this tool. It helps us uncover as an organisation opportunities that maybe we might not have articulated previously. Highlight threats maybe that also might start to become more of an issue. And it also assists us as an organisation really reviewing our own resources, our own capabilities, and making sure we can match those as well. So strengths, these are our internal positive factors. They're, what the business wants to maintain, what they want to build, what they want to leverage, and it can set us apart from our competitors. It could ultimately give us a competitive advantage. These could be things like positive attributes of people. It could be their knowledge, their skills, networking, reputation. It could be tangible assets of the organisation. So it could be capital, existing customers, the distribution channels, partners. And again, they could be anything depending on the organisation. But weaknesses are then the opposite of that, as you would assume. And these are the things that detract maybe from the value that's offered by the business. It maybe place that business at a disadvantage, and they need to obviously be reviewed and remedied where possible. So these are things that may be areas of improvement that in order to accomplish our objectives or to compete with the strongest competitor, we need to look at. So I've listed some things here, areas that competitors do better, resource limitations, skill limitations. These are all key weaknesses that organisations might have. And you'll notice here that these bullet points are meant to be generic and get you to sort of think about how this could be applied. Opportunities are those factors that are external to the organisation, so from macro and micro environments. And these are positive areas that the business needs to look at prioritising or optimising. And there are opportunities for them to add value, maybe, and look to build maybe a competitive advantage as well. So this is all looking at what opportunities exist in that environment. How could the organisation benefit from them? Maybe, as it says here, there's underserved markets, maybe some markets with fewer competitors in. Are there emerging needs around products and services? Look at some of the opportunities that have come out right now of the current situation and the pandemic. There are opportunities that are there for, especially for smaller businesses. Then threats are those that external factors, again, in our macro and micro environments that could basically place any plans or strategy that the organisation has at risk for the business. There's a massive risk to the organisation. So the business needs to decide how they're actually going to counteract these particular threats, maybe try and build contingencies where possible. So what challenges are there in the external environment? Could be emerging competition, changing regulation, changes in customer attitude. We could look at things like new products or technologies that maybe have been introduced that could make products or equipment or services obsolete. Again, massive changes in what's happening in the external environment. A huge threat to all organisations right now could be certainly the pandemic. One thing though about this model, using this model practically, we want SWOTs, not SWAGs. What is a SWAG? Well, if you haven't seen MacDonald before, he's a marketing guru, strategist, and he's incredibly funny. And he's not a big fan of a SWOT actually, and he said he always sees SWAGs. And as Malcolm says, and excuse me if this offends anyone, it's scientific wild ass guesses. So we want to have SWOTs. We don't want to have guesswork. And his frustration is with SWOTs are that they're often very generic. And you put a SWOT into a table. Oh, well, I know what a threat is: competition. Oh, I know what a threat is: changing technology. And we need to be a bit more specific with that. So I think the point I'm trying to make here is if you're going to do a SWOT, try and underpin it with some actual data analysis to make sure that therefore useful. It gives you some actual insight that you can then use for whatever purpose you need it for, probably then to help you create objectives or put together a campaign plan. So why do we, what's so great about a SWOT? Well, it's so simple, but it's actually quite effective. SWOT works great as well as a workshop session. So getting people to put a SWOT together based upon brainstorming. So I often use these in client brainstorming sessions, get them to put together a SWOT analysis based on their organisation. Often they are a little bit generic, but at least it gives them a starting point to then go off and do the analysis and really make sure they understand what's going on. It provides a really good summary then of the current situation. So it pulls together any analysis that we've done of the current situation, provides an excellent analysis and summary of that. It starts us then to switch our brains to what do we now need to do next. As we've identified, it helps to build on strengths, address our weaknesses, help to minimise risks, takes advantage of any opportunities perhaps, and it's very useful to kick off any kind of strategy formulation. So if we go right back to SOSTAC, we saw that our situation analysis, which led us into our objectives, we could use a SWOT at the end of that situation analysis. But really, as I said, the best thing about SWOTs are we can use them in a lot of situations. It can be used for specific channels. It can be a great tool, as I say, for agencies to demonstrate their understanding to the client of their current situation and then start recommending different approaches. You can even do your own personal SWOT as well, as I said before. So it's a really useful tool. And something else is just to mention is that actually you can take SWOT one step further. Some of you might have come across this before, toes or tows, however you want to pronounce it. But that's an additional benefit of the SWOT. We can then go on. I know it's actually an additional model. So you've got 6 for the price of 5 today. It's such a good model because it can then help us to then put together strategies based upon our SWOT findings. So toes is essentially looking at combining our strengths with opportunities, strengths with threats, weaknesses with opportunities, weaknesses with threats, to come up and focus on some key strategies. So as I said, strengths opportunities, which is our maxi strategy. So how can we develop and look and to put together strategies that are using our strengths to maximize our opportunities, or strengths and weaknesses. How can we take advantage of our strengths to avoid the real potential threats? And you can see how you can combine them, and it's getting us to think, based upon all the analysis we've done, what are our strategic options that are open to us? And I guess you're probably all going, well, what's the difference between them? Do I actually really need both of them? Well, a SWOT analysis, as we said, you identify your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities and threats in point form. Then you think about each point then in sort of a singular perspective. Whereas this TOES matrix that you can see here, that looks at the actual relationships between the factors. It looks to then help you create strategies based upon those areas that you've identified. So it's just a really simple application of SWOT that can then help hone in on strategy. Apologies, just quick swig of water. Okay, our next model, AIDA. Now this is a real classic model. So this actually dates back, wait for it, 1899. And it was created by a chap called Lewis, and he was an American advertising agency CEO. And it was, AIDA stands for awareness, interest, desire, and action. And the reason why this model was put together, it was really put together as a way of understanding the sales process, but also a way of demonstrating the place, the place of advertising, especially because ad agencies at that time were relatively new, and they weren't something that that many organisations at that point in 1899 were utilising. So as you can see, it's a sequential model. So it suggests that in order to gain an action, so someone actually to, purchase something, maybe that action could be requests information, download an app, whatever that might be, that prospective customer's attention has to be gained. We then have to develop their interest. We have to essentially get them to have a strong enough desire to then take action. So it seems pretty obvious, doesn't it, really? But it's still a very useful model to help guide marketing and also communications plans, because it can help us both review the aims and effectiveness of a campaign, but also it can help us guide perhaps creative and messaging that might be needed in campaigns as well. Also notice that funnel. So it's showing us maybe AIDA a bit like a purchasing funnel. So potential customers decrease from awareness through to interest, desire, and action. Some people say this model is a little bit dated because it doesn't take into account those retention stages, but we can always add that on at the end, so we can have awareness, interest, desire, action, and retention if we wanted to. But I think the beauty of this is that it really is very simplistic, and just looking a little bit how we can use it in practice. So how can we actually use it in our job roles? Because again, I don't know if you went into your boss and said, I'm going to use AIDA, he'd probably look at you and think you know, not really sure unless they were aware of AIDA. But actually thinking about how we can use this more in our day-to-day job roles. Firstly, awareness. So how can we make our buyers aware of our products and services? What could be our outreach strategy? How can we put together a suitable awareness campaign? What tools and platforms do we need to use? What do our messages need to be? So that's our awareness stage. Interest. So how are we going to gain our customers' interest or prospective customers' interests? How do we show the advantages and benefits of our products? What's our content strategy going to be here? How are we going to utilize maybe social proof to help increase that interest level? Then we get to desire. How are we going to convince customers that they want and they desire that actual product or service, and how will it satisfy their needs? So what makes our product or service desirable? How are we going to interact with those customers? How are we going to make maybe an emotional connection with them? How might we engage with them? Do we need some online chat? Do we need maybe something, use social media channels? Do we need to share tips and advice? How can we get them to, how can we make that emotional connection? How can we get them to really want that particular product or service? And then finally, action. How do we actually get them to convert? What are the calls to action are we going to use? How are we going to drive conversions? So this might get us to think about how easy is it for customers to actually buy from us. This might think about their whole user experience across our website, if that's what we're using. Also thinking about what channels and marketing channels or platforms are best for gaining those conversions. And you'll notice I've added retention here as maybe a final stage of how to upsell, cross-sell, develop advocacy, develop loyalty from our customers. So that really shows you that by thinking about AIDA, we can help develop a marketing plan, or we could also use this for perhaps a communications plan. AIDA can even be used as for a copywriting technique. So how do we get someone aware? So how do we get them engaged with us? How do we raise their interest? How do we get them to actually really want it? And then how do we get them to then take the next step? So if we think about the role that content might play in copywriting, especially if we think about landing pages and squeeze pages, AIDA is a really effective model to use and to think about when we are developing copy for such pages that are designed to get people to do something, often to give up their data. So why AIDA? I think I've already really covered the first one. It's simple and it really is timeless. It's possible to use this model in so many different areas, which I've shown you. So, it can be put together a plan. It can be put together a plan. It can put together communications. Think about messaging. It can help us maybe put together our content strategy. It can help us with our copywriting. It works on many different levels. As I've already said, though, critics have said that there's a problem with it not covering all the stages. So we can expand on it perhaps. There's another one very similar to AIDA, which is REAN, you might have heard of. Reach, engage, activate, nurture, which is kind of a slightly different take on AIDA, but again, a really useful model getting us to think about how our communications and how our marketing might need to work with our customers. Obviously, we have to be aware of there are other influencing factors that could affect whether someone has the ability to take that action or has the desire. So it could be thinking about availability and pricing, maybe advice or recommendations, the role of word of mouth as well within that. So there are obviously other things we have to be aware of. So moving on to our fourth model, which is 5 W's and 1 H. Who, what, when, why, where, and how. Now, you're probably thinking, Red, isn't this what journalists use? Well, actually, yes, it is. Journalists and reporters use this to basically fact find for the pieces that they're writing. But it's such a versatile model. It can be used by marketers in their day-to-day job roles. And I use it particularly for really starting out, especially when I go to clients. I use this framework to talk about and get some information about their customers, to start the basis of their customer analysis. It's really good, as I say, as a kickoff for brainstorming. And we can then, by asking these questions, we can get a really good basic understanding of who the customers are to then go and start developing a little bit more with actual data as well, and developing a little bit more, looking at the customer journey, etc. So how does this apply if we're looking at undertaking a customer analysis? So as I said, this is how I plan to, I suggested or often use this particular model. And by the way, there isn't an author for this particular model. It's generally an accepted acronym. I haven't really been able to find the originator. If anyone maybe here has an idea, that'd be great for you to share. But applying it then. So if we're looking at customer analysis, the first part is who. So who is involved in buying and consuming? So this looks to describe who the consumer or customer actually is. So their demographics maybe, location, could be where they are in the family life cycle, could be their job title. But also, most importantly, this looks to describe and look at who the decision-making unit is. Obviously, in B2B, it's critical to understand that decision-making unit. So, who the initiator is perhaps of the requirement, or who the influencer deciders and actual purchasers are of individual products, because that's really going to affect your marketing plan and your communications plans. But also increasingly, we see a decision-making unit for consumers as well, especially with technology. There's lots more discussion that goes on in the household. Younger generations in the household often more in charge of technology purchases as well. So we do have things to say about the different digital the different decision-making units. Now, moving on then to what. So this is what is their choice criterion. So what criteria do they choose when they are looking at products and services? So let's say I'm buying a fridge freezer. What's my criterion for choosing that? Again, is it peer review? Is it price? Is it service support? Again, you can see how this can then feed in to our marketing activities. We're then looking at when. So when do they buy and use? So think about the timing and the occasion. What time of day do they actually use the product, or when do they actually buy that particular product? Are there seasonal factors? Why do they buy, and why do they use that particular product? So again, this focuses on buying motivation, thinking about what problems or needs they're addressing. So just to give you a simple example here, a consumer doesn't want a lawnmower, they actually just want something that will make cut their grass and make the lawn look beautiful. So again, thinking about why somebody buys, what's their ultimate goal, and rather than, again, this goes down to even to copywriting. We talk about benefits rather than features, because that taps into what someone actually wants to achieve from utilising that product or service. Where do they buy? So thinking about where they actually want to purchase, in-store or online, the channels that they want to use, and finally, how do they actually use that products and services? So how they want to use the products and services that the organisations sell. That might therefore influence packaging, maybe warranties, after-sale services. So you can really see here that from just a very simple model, I'm really getting a better understanding of who the customers are and what they want, and therefore how that could then shape my marketing activities. I mean, one thing I will say is it doesn't take into account some of maybe some of the pain points that might be that a customer might have. It doesn't really look at maybe the touch points they have across the customer journey, but it certainly provides a good basis for a marketer, an excellent basis for a marketer to take forward. As I showed you already, it can provide and help focus our messaging, because we know why they buy, we know why they want to buy, their motivations for buying, so we can really help them tailor that value proposition. As I've shown you already, it can be used across many different situations, help focus that customer research. It can help to build personas. Again, it can be the basis of us building our customer persona, and it can also create that customer focused marketing plan and campaign. Not sure if many of you have come across this before, but I love this model. This is the Golden Circle, and this was produced by a guy called Simon Sinek back in 2009. He did a TED talk, and this basically, Golden Circle, works on why, how, and what. And he suggested that successful businesses consider these three key areas. So what the business does, so the products and services it sells, how they do it, so the things that actually sets the business apart from others, and why. The thing that Sinek said was that not many businesses actually knew, or very new, well, didn't actually know or weren't able to articulate why they were doing what they were doing. It's not about making money. That's actually the result. The why needs to be the purpose. It needs to be the belief or the cause. Why does that business actually exist? Why do you exist as a business? And why this is so powerful from my perspective is that Sinek said that many businesses do their marketing backwards. They start with what they actually do and then move on to how they actually do it, rather than why they do it. So this model is brilliant for marketers because it gives us focus. It helps us to focus our messaging on why we exist as an organisation, which can then help us stand out from our competitors. It can also then help communicate differences. So this approach I've used quite a few times, especially with smaller businesses, to really help them get to the crux of their communications. and really help them put together and communicate their value proposition. So it's really useful, especially for websites. So getting in that online value proposition very clear right at the outset, but say also for small startups. I think this is an also important quote here. People don't buy from you, but they don't buy what you do, sorry, but why you actually do it. So why is the reason to buy? And the what is merely the tangible products and the proof of that particular belief. That's what SOSTAC said. And the what's are the reasons that we can point to that rationalization as to why we like that product or that particular company over another. So if you think about what you purchase, often, for example, actually I've just seen a delivery driver outside my house who's delivering me some very nice gin that I've got to have for the weekend. And the reason I buy from that company isn't necessarily what that particular product, the reason is why is because it's from field to bottle, it's made locally, and I believe in the ethics of the business as well. So a really good example also I've got here is from a local business actually to me that makes homemade spices. And if they started their campaigns with starting backwards with the what, we could say something like, we make amazing Indian spice blends. You can create easy Indian meals. Do you want to buy some? That could be the basic of their message if they started with the what. But if we flip that round and said, actually, let's think about the why, their marketing messages could then be around the basis of, we believe in great taste and flavour, we create freshly home-cooked food, our blends are all homemade, we use traditional Indian spices and authentic spices. Would you like to buy some? So you can see the why that we exist there from that particular spice blend organisation. They are essentially suggesting that, you know, we believe in great taste, great flavour, we help you create amazing home-cooked food, all our blends are homemade, it's all authentic, rather than going, well, we just make these kind of blends and you can make some nice Indian meals with them. So it really helps to focus on that why. So as I say, people buy what you do, don't buy what you do, they buy why you actually do it. And I think that's really important. So why the Golden Circle? As you can see, it's hugely customer focused. So having loyal customers is all about attracting the right people and who share that brand's fundamental beliefs. So again, people don't buy what a business does, they buy why it does. So if you can find those customers that share that belief, they'll be much more loyal. As I said previously, we can use this model to help create value propositions, even mission statements. It really helps to focus the minds of, you know, especially for small businesses, of the owners, and focus on that business purpose. I always ask them, what's your why? You know, why do you exist? What's your purpose as an organization? And then get them to articulate that and try to articulate it relatively easily. I always get them to think about that elevator pitch as well. What's your why shouldn't certainly be an essay. It can also help an organisation and business ensure that marketing is aligned also with the purpose of the organisation too. As I said with the previous model, this can also help in defining personas. It can support content development, especially with copywriting. So for example, when we're writing an email or a blog post or a landing page, if we start with thinking and writing the why first, this can also then help bring out that underlying value of the messaging and what's being promoted. So again, rather than starting with the what, we're starting with why should you buy this? As I gave the example of that Indian spice blend. But also it can inspire great leadership through the basis of a strong mission and also a value proposition as well. So that is 5 models that you can use in your marketing, and they are classic marketing models that we teach across marketing qualifications such as CIM qualifications, and you can see that they can be used practically and they can be used in your day-to-day job role. I hope you found that interesting today. I don't know if anyone has any questions. I can see the chat area.